Without the army, the State Department is having some trouble asserting its authority in Iraq. So what challenges does it face and how will it meet them? I'm Allen Barton. Stand by for Front Page. Joining me in studio, Elan Journo, fellow at the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights, and Terry Jones, associate editor for Investors Business Daily. All right, Elan, in a New York Times story, it was reported that the State Department is going to draw down their police training force in Iraq. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on here?
So for a while, we've been trying to train the Iraqi police, who are like Keystone Cops, basically, and even worse in that they are playing both sides of some of these. We had something like 350 Americans training. That dwindled to about 190, 150, and that it might go to zero pretty soon. The real story here is that the Iraqis are the ones pushing back. They don't want this. They're not going to sessions. They just want the Americans out completely. And I think the untold story is that Iraq is now really under the sway of Iran. And this is really bears emphasis in that Iran won. We went to war, Iran won, in effect, getting so much control of Iraq. And the other part of this is, here we're seeing kind of the knock-on effects of a bad policy in Iraq, where we went there with unclear goals. We went to nation build when we should have done other things, I think, for our own self-interest. And here we've ceded Iraq, in effect, to one of our worst enemies. And it's all kind of done with the veneer of, this is all very genteel and diplomatic. They just want us to remove our trainers. In effect, Iran, I think, is poised or hoping to gain even stronger control in that country, which is a bad, bad development.
Terry, do you agree, or is this something where we can look at it as good news? We say, look, we went in there to create, hopefully, some kind of country with some kind of democratic institutions and some kind of mechanism other than Saddam Hussein. And now they are sovereign, and they want to run their own affairs, and they want to train their own police and deal with their own corruption, and so be it. It's time to get out, and we shouldn't be so afraid of that.
Well, I think it probably is time to get out, because I don't think the American people would support much of a large presence there for any longer than it has been. But unfortunately, I also think that Elan's correct. I mean, one of the things that we ignored when we went in there was the religious element of this. And that is that Iraq is a Shiite-dominated culture, at least in terms of numbers. And once we handed it over to the Shiites, Iran is also a Shiite country, and they have long-standing ties between the religious figures and political figures. And it was only a matter of time before Iran began dominating Iraq. And unfortunately, that seems to be the situation right now. And there's not much we can do about it other than go back to war with them.
Yeah, well, probably not likely. In another story, moving to Afghanistan, we have a lot of really disturbing news there in terms of what they call green on blue attacks, which is a Afghan military trained by the U.S. turning their guns on their U.S. trainers. You want to talk a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I mean, the incidence of this has really been climbing. The numbers overall are not enormous. I think there were 35 casualties last year, but this year in the first 5 months, it's up to, I think, 20, 25, 22. And what's scary here is that the U.S. again is intertwined with the Afghan establishment, trying to train what is a non-existent military force, a security apparatus. And it's these soldiers who are turning on the Americans, partly because I think there's an animus against America. But what it reveals, I think, in a really dramatic way, is the extent to which Afghanistan is a non-functioning regime. I mean, you'd have to say a minimum requirement for some regime to assert its sovereignty over some piece of land is you have a security force. You can control...
You can defend it against anything.
Exactly, or even a police force, right?
Yeah.
They don't have that. It's a joke. And this is another case where I think where the chickens are coming home to roost. This is another case where the goal of nation building in Afghanistan should not have been the goal. I think we should have had a more specific goal of eliminating the threat to the extent it was, but it didn't happen. It was a screw up. And now we're paying for this because it's not clear that we should be there. And it's not clear how bad things are going to be. I know it's going to be bad if we go. So we're kind of in this lose-lose situation with support for this endeavor dwindling, rapidly.
Terry, what do you think? I mean, I've read a lot of analysis from military people as well who say we should have just built a large base somewhere that we could defend absolutely and use that base to direct military action against al-Qaeda, terrorist elements, things that could be of danger to the national security of the United States and our allies, and let the government be whatever it's going to be, which is completely non-functioning and corrupt as it is now, with all of our taxpayer money in it.
That might be the best route at this point. I mean, look, let's look at both Afghanistan and Pakistan, its next door neighbor, whom we also have severe problems with. Neither of those countries is really, in any real sense, a country. I mean, they don't have a sense of nationhood. They don't have a sense of nationality. They're very tribal, clannish, you know, very regional. And trying to turn them into modern nation states has just not worked in the past, and it's not working now. Be far better to have whoever's in power there know that should they in any way back a terrorist attack against us or be implicated, that we would take them out. I mean, take them out in a very direct and brutal way. And if that was the case, then you might get a measure of respect. But instead, we're going through this thing of trying to create police and army people, and they resent it. They don't like us. They hate our values. The only thing they like about us is our money. Well, at a certain point, we're going to have to leave.
All right, guys, thank you very much. For Elan and Terry, I'm Allen Barton. You've been watching Front Page.